Hello, and welcome to the Cycle Endometriosis podcast, where we will delve deep into experiences, challenges, and triumphs of those navigating a life with endometriosis. Join us as we share the stories of resilience, offer insights from experts, and foster a community of support for those affected by this often misunderstood condition. Whether you're newly diagnosed, a seasoned warrior, or seeking understanding, I hope this podcast is here to help empower you and uplift you on your journey. Tune in as we break the silence, shatter stigmas, and amplify the voices of the endometriosis community. Medical disclaimer: this podcast is not intended for the purpose of providing medical advice. All information, content, and material of this podcast is for informational purposes only and is not intended to serve as a substitute for the consultation, diagnosis, and/or medical treatment of a qualified physician or healthcare provider. Thank you so much for being here, and now on to the show. Hello, everyone, and welcome to this month's episode of the Cycle Podcast. Thank you so much for being here, and let's welcome our guest, Tori, to the show. Tori, welcome. How are you today?
I'm good. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for being here. We really appreciate it. Look forward to hearing more about your story and journey with endometriosis. But before we get into that, can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, so let's see. I am a copywriter and content writer, and somehow I got thrust into the field of technology, even though I know nothing about it. So I have to research the heck out of everything and then write it. But luckily, half the things I write about are video game stuff. So I'm like, okay, I can understand that. So I get to write for a living and I love it. Let's see. I have a husband I've been married to for 16 years and a crazy cat that you'll probably see sometime throughout this. And I love horror movies and being scared out of my mind. And that's really about all there is to me.
Okay. Well, I do not like horror movies. And fun fact, I do marketing in the movie business. And so when I just a couple of weeks ago went to CinemaCon, which is in Vegas, and I watched, for people who are not watching the video, which you can watch on YouTube and Spotify, just so you know, but this is how I watch horror movie trailers. I can't even watch them. Abigail, that was, I don't know if it was horror, but it was more like vampire-y, but that came out last weekend. So I don't know if people saw it or not. We're recording this in April, just so everybody knows. But yeah. Not my favorite genre, but a lot of people I work with love horror movies.
I love it till I'm trying to sleep in the middle of the night, and then I
just don't even want those images in my head. Like, that's why I close my eyes during the trailers. But
I totally get it.
A lot of people are excited for Quiet Place Day One.
The prequel, right?
The prequel, yeah. It seems like that's going to be pretty popular, and Smile too. Coming out.
That's a freaky one.
They did such a great marketing campaign with that. But anyway, I know everybody's not here to hear us talk about movies and marketing, but that would actually be like a really fun show. Just movie recommendations. Because, hey, when we don't feel good, sometimes I'm binging movies because I love movies too. Just
seriously.
Not horror movies. Keep them lighthearted over here. Well, good.
Funny.
Well, when did you start to feel like something was going on, or symptoms, or maybe you had zero symptoms? When did, endo start to come into your life?
So here's why I'm actually on the podcast, because I'm pretty new to my diagnosis and I've been learning about it through your podcast and, of course, heavy duty Googling.
Yes.
But I didn't have the classic symptoms until a lot more recently. And so I wanted to kind of talk about what it's like not to check all the endo boxes and have a little bit of a different experience, because I didn't really have endo symptoms until 8 years ago, and my cat has emerged. So if you see me she's trying to go over the top. Moxie, go away, Moxie. Oh no, I need a stick to poke her away. Okay, I'm just gonna grab her just a sec.
Yeah, go ahead.
She started early.
Cats are cats, dogs. We've had all of the friends in the show. Oh, she's very cute.
Crazy.
Everybody has to go watch the video. She's adorable little fluffer.
She's absolutely crazy. I wake up in the night with her biting my hand. So anyways, I could talk about her forever.
She's a little fluff ball. Oh my gosh, she's so cute. Okay, well that's interesting and very helpful. And thank you so much for the kind words about the show, for you to talk about, you know, this different kind of journey. And that's different for everybody. And that's why I always like to say, when did things kind of start? Because I've met some people that never had any symptoms ever, which is,
Oh, really?
Which is incredibly helpful for the community to hear, because it's different for all of us.
Yeah, it can catch you by surprise when you don't have those usual symptoms. You're like, I have what now? What? Google says I shouldn't have it. What are you talking about?
Right. So how did it even start to, like, how did you start to get on the path?
Well, let's see. I have had pretty normal periods. I said my first period at 12 and everything was pretty normal. Like an Advil would take care of my cramps, nothing crazy. And then I got on birth control when I was 23, had a NuvaRing, and that went pretty normal. You know, you have your period and it's like 5 days and nothing crazy. And then at 28, I got off of birth control because I wanted to start thinking about having a kid. And then a couple years after that is when things started. Now, for me, I had really irregular periods. And so, like, they would be fine and then they'd skip 1 or 2 and they'd be fine. And I talked to my doctor about it and she didn't have a lot to say. That was helpful, of course.
Yeah.
And then I didn't really have much in the way of pain issues until probably about 2015. And I'm almost 40. So I've been at this period thing for a while.
Right.
Yeah. And then my pain was a little different. It's fluctuated and morphed. Yeah.
Yeah. So pretty normal, everything. And then after birth control, things started to get a little off. Right. But then your pain didn't really start till several years after that.
Yeah. Wow. So about whatever the math is, 2015, because I went through all my medical records and that's how I know these. But for me, my pain actually started as, what is it called? I have it written down. Perineum pain. Like, you know, that area that no one talks about.
Yes.
So, you know, like when you bruise your arm or something and then like any little thing just hurts really bad, it felt really tender like that. Yeah. And I had no idea why. And and then I would have, the weirdest. And it would hurt so bad that I would just have to be in a bathtub and not move. And it wouldn't happen all the time. It just happened with some periods, and sometimes I wasn't even on my period. And we're like, what?
It was just other times. And that pain, I know that pain that you're talking about, like that, just something just lightly even touching you is, and it's so painful, and it's hard to even like describe. It's like like you described it actually really well, like a bruise. Like that is a good description.
Very tender.
Yeah. Oh.
And it's like, what is happening? Yeah. And then, other than that, the only other pain I've consistently had during my periods, I've called it my whole life. I've called it bowling ball tummy, where you feel like there's a bowling ball sitting in your tummy. And it must be endobelly. And I just like never knew. But I'd be like, I have bowling ball tummy again. And it just, you know, it's very, you feel unwieldy and cumbersome and uncomfortable. And for me, it lasts to the very last drop of every cycle. Like the very last drop, I'll still have bowling ball tummy.
Wow. And it's painful. And it is pain. Like people don't understand, like not only can you not button your pants, like it hurts. It's like, because you're distended. It's like your skin hurt. My skin almost would like hurt when I would feel like that, because it just was so stretched.
Exactly. And you're just so heavy feeling.
Yeah.
And so those were the things I had at first. Those were my first endo things. And then it, of course, morphed after that.
Did you go see a doctor and talk about these things? And what, I'm afraid to even ask. and what maybe were you told?
Yeah, so what's interesting is I actually used to work at an OBGYN as a receptionist. So funnily enough, I've actually scheduled many an endometriosis appointment. I've even scheduled ablations and things like that. But I never really dug that deep into it because I was busy and I didn't have this thing. So I just said something about bad periods. It just never clicked. Right. But I knew my doctors that I worked for had a lot of experience. So I figured she'd know how to help me. But she didn't really help me. Yeah. And she meant well, but since my symptoms, you know, irregular periods and all that stuff doesn't quite dovetail with the usual endo stuff, she never suspected endo. And she just gave me naproxen and muscle relaxants, which is the only thing that works is muscle relaxants. Thank goodness for that. Yeah. But otherwise, not helpful.
Yeah. So what happened after that?
Well, let's look at my list. I have notes. Like, what did happen after that? Let's see. So I dealt with that, and my periods started getting more and more regular. And then around 2018 to 2019, I started getting ovarian pain. So I would get like a week before my cycle, really bad ovary pain. And that would indicate that my cycle was up.
So what did that ovarian pain feel like?
For me, it felt like someone's taking a dull melon baller and trying to like scoop out my ovaries, like in a dull gnawing kind of way. And it was very unpleasant.
Yeah, and you said it was both sides.
Both sides, yeah. So,
and
you
went to the doctor. Yeah.
And she had me do an ultrasound, and it didn't show anything. So she didn't do anything. She just said, "Oh, you must be fine." And so I just dealt with it for like 2 more years. And this whole time I'm trying to have a baby. So I've been off birth control for like 9-10 years by this point. And what's really frustrating is that when you skip your periods, you get a lot of false alarms like, oh, maybe I'm pregnant. Oh, no, it's just periods being stupid again. So I'm dealing with ovary pain, irregular periods, and I do get a lot of pelvic pain too. And it kind of sucks. So that's where I'm at in 2021.
And just the challenge of you were trying to have a baby too at the same time, the emotional and mental toll that takes.
Yes.
And no answers. You had no answers at this point, right?
Right.
And so, and you said 8 or 9 years.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You were off birth control. So your symptoms, like things started feeling different almost a decade.
Yeah. Oh, and it kept ramping up. It was, and like,
things.
Go ahead. Like it, it hurt, but I know that like a lot of other people with really bad endo, they talk about how they're like curled up in a ball and like they throw up or they pass out. And as bad as my stuff got, it only got that bad occasionally. So that's another reason I didn't really think I had endo, because my pain would be like to a 6 to 7 typically. It didn't usually get to a 10. And so I thought it wasn't bad enough to be something like that. So I didn't. I'm glad you said that
though. Yeah, that's important because this disease doesn't check all the boxes for everybody in that way. And I think it's really important to be talked about because that just exacerbates the issue with doctors and awareness. Like, oh, you couldn't have that because you're not passed out every month. And that's just not the case for everyone.
Yeah.
Yeah. I appreciate you sharing that. It's important.
Yeah. And my cycles would last about 7 days, but like it would start off heavy for a couple days and then I'd have nothing. And then like a few days later I'd have light. So it wasn't like crazy heavy like a lot of people. So that was another thing that didn't fit. So
sure.
There are a lot
and at
of
this point, are you starting to get like, just like, I know something's wrong and they can't figure it out? Like, is that frustration starting to happen?
Oh yeah, but mostly because my husband was the one who pushed me, because I was naive and trusting and like, this doctor has been my friend. I worked for her. I'm sure it's fine. The doctor said it's fine. And my husband's like, this isn't normal. You need to get another opinion. You need to be aggressive. It's not normal to be plugged into a hot pad all week. And so I'm like, okay, it's always him nagging me that gets me to do anything. And so I finally did in 2021. My old clinic that I worked for actually closed during the pandemic and like they never reopened. And so I had to find a different doctor. And so I went to this new doctor and I told her, hey, I'm having these ovary issues. And it had been 2 years since my last ultrasound. So she decided to give me another one. So this is 2021. And they finally found something. They found 2 complex ovarian cysts, one on each side. And so I'm trying to figure out what to do with that. She was this doctor sucked too. So all she did was for an entire year just have me keep doing ultrasounds. She didn't do anything else. And each ultrasound is $700 each with insurance. So I still had to pay it out of pocket, $700 each. And I would talk to her after the ultrasound and she's like, well, it didn't grow. So let's just do it again in 3 months. And it's just like, I'm not made of money. And I would love an answer. And she was like, even worse than the first doctor. And I was getting really frustrated. Yeah. And then, my last ultrasound I had, every time I go, it would be a different tech. And this tech said, did you know you have chocolate cysts, endometriomas? I'm like, no. And she's like, yeah, I have endometriosis, and this looks like it. You need to talk to your doctor. I'm like, well, that would answer a few things. And so I talked to my doctor, and she's like, we don't really know if that's what you have. Let's do another ultrasound. She like ignored me. And so I finally had enough, and I found a third doctor.
I have chills though that tech had endo and basically said you need to ask your doctor about this.
Yeah, I got lucky that I had her that day because none of the other techs said anything. And she's like, I'm not actually supposed to even give you this advice, so don't tell her I said. Yeah, but I'm like, thank you, because I wouldn't have thought of it. Because like I said, my symptoms don't really fit classically. And so I'm like, oh, well. And so I was really frustrated because the doctor wouldn't listen to my concerns. And so I found a third doctor who I actually used to work for at that clinic. She had started her own clinic years ago. And this is so dumb. The reason I didn't go to her before is because she works downtown and I'm afraid to drive on one-way streets because it's my nightmare that I'll crash and go the wrong way. So
that's not dumb. It's a valid fear.
So like I could have probably gotten help way sooner if I just hadn't been so chicken.
But who knows if she would have known, or if that tech didn't say something. I mean, there's just so many factors, right?
So just don't be afraid to like go the extra mile literally to find good help. That's my advice there. So then things get kind of interesting. So by now it's 2023. It's January 2023. And I scheduled my appointment, and it's actually just this one doctor and her nurse practitioner. It's a really small clinic, and she just focuses on GYN, no OB stuff, which is nice because that's not distracting her.
Yes.
And so I see the tech and I say, hey, I'm getting older and I really need some answers about my fertility. I would like to stop having endless ultrasounds. I want answers here. And she listened to me. What a concept. And she's like, okay, let's do an MRI and get a better look at what's going on. And then let's do some fertility blood work to see what your hormone levels are at. And that's when everything went to heck.
Started to get some answers. Okay. So what happened then? How before you go into that, how are you feeling? Are things starting to get progressively worse? Have you Googled endo at this point and you're like, I really do think I have endometriosis?
Yeah.
What was happening in those kind of years where you were just in these ultrasound circles?
Yes. So after that tech had told me I probably had endo, then I did a lot more research. I'm like, oh yeah, this fits, like the bowling ball tummy. Oh, that's probably endo belly. And then like there's other symptoms that I didn't realize fit until after I got diagnosed and I listened to your podcast, because some of your podcasters, like I just listened to one yesterday and she had like 2 symptoms that I'd never heard. I'm like, I have those. I'm not alone. It's so wonderful to have people that you can hear with the same problems and know that you're not alone. So I was getting all this research going and I'm like, I bet I do have endo. And I talked to the nurse and she didn't discount it. And I was so happy that she took it seriously. It's huge to actually be listened to.
It is. It's wonderful when you find someone who can validate what you're going through after years of going through it too.
Yes. Oh gosh. Cause by then it'd been like 11 or 12 years. I don't remember. It'd been a while. It's been over a decade. Yeah. So this is where things got interesting. She had me do the blood work first, and I was scheduled to do the MRI like a week later. And so it's January of 2023, and I actually had a house guest over. And then I get a phone call from my nurse practitioner, and she's like, okay, we got your blood work back, and your prolactin levels are really high. And I'm like, what's that? She's like, it's a hormone, and it's too high. And when it's high like that, it means you probably have a brain tumor, which is the worst thing you want to hear, because you just automatically assume you're dying. And then she's like, no, it's not cancer. It's not cancer. It just needs to be treated with medication and it shrinks the tumor. But you should know that you can't have children while you're on this medication. And I said, how long will I be on it? And she's like, probably at least 2 years. And I was like 38 by then. And so for me, it just meant you're never having children, because my goal is after 40, like to maybe just And so here I am with this house guest. I'm trying not to cry. And I go downstairs and immediately cry. And she was so sweet because it turns out she had endo too. And she was giving me, I know. And she's like, it's okay. And she told me about her surgery that she'd done. And it was really nice to have someone to talk to.
Yes.
And so, I had the MRI for the endo the next week. And then 2 days later, I had a brain MRI. And the endo one revealed that I had bilateral infiltration, deep cysts, and my bowel was indrawn. And she said it was just like everywhere. And so she's like, I'm passing you over to the doctor now, and she's going to take over. And she said probably stage 4. And she said if I need to get treated, it's probably going to be hysterectomy. But I don't know enough about it yet to know if that's what I would do. But she recommended a specialist who I don't remember their name, but you actually interviewed them in one of your podcast episodes. Yeah, a doctor.
Okay. It was probably okay, continue.
Yeah, and when I listened to that episode, I'm like, oh my gosh, this is awesome, because it made me feel so good that when I'm ready to go to this person, they clearly know what they're talking about. And it was so thank you for doing that, because it made me feel a lot better about my future appointment with them when I finally get to it.
Yes, because I don't interview a lot of doctors because I try to keep it super patient focused. So that's incredible. That's great. And and a hysterectomy, I know a lot of doctors recommend that, but as I'm sure you know, and everybody in the podcast know, it's not a cure for endometriosis.
Exactly.
It's an old myth. And, but I feel like sometimes when you're in the first line of defense with a GYN, they recommend that, which is not a cure. It's just an old myth. And then when you get to an endo specialist, they can really work more to do the excision surgery and remove the lesions. Wow. Okay. So, and then did you have to start that medication?
This is where, oh my gosh. So everything went to heck again. So let me tell you about prolactinomas. First, it's called a pituitary adenoma. It means you have a tumor on your pituitary gland. And these can secrete 3 different kinds of hormones. And so they need to determine what it's actually secreting. And sometimes it can do more than one. And so they had to do 5 months of testing, 5 months, to determine what I actually had, so I got the right meds. So here's the 3 different possibilities. One is it'll secrete growth hormone, which creates some big problems, like your hands and your feet and your face and your organs will grow uncontrollably, and they can't reverse it. So like luckily it's slow moving, so you have time to notice, but like some people don't realize it until years later. And like this one lady's tongue grew so big it wouldn't fit in her mouth anymore. Your hands it's like giantism, but just for certain. And you die early because it stresses out your organs because they're growing, and it's horrifying.
Wow.
So she did a test for that, and luckily I didn't have it. But this kind of tumor very rarely can turn into that. So I have to keep an eye on it. So every time I see my endocrinologist, she's like, how do your shoes fit? And I'm like, they're good right now. It's now when I get shoes that are a little too small in accident, I freak out because I'm like, I have it. So that's terrifying. Yes. But they can treat that. They can do brain surgery and take it out, and then you're golden. The second kind of secretion is cortisol for Cushing's disease. So it's your stress hormone. And I did have some symptoms of that, and that's why it took 5 months to narrow down, because it's really hard to pinpoint those tests. And so she's like, it's either prolactinoma or Cushing's. I can't treat you until I know. And you know what sucks about the tests is you can't be on birth control. You can't be on most medications. You can't even have certain vitamins. You can't use your face creams because it all messes with the test results. And so my endo's getting worse during this. I really wanted to get on birth control, and I couldn't. I was just waiting and waiting and waiting.
Hormones,
And so it took forever to finally get answers. And then I was diagnosed with good old-fashioned prolactinoma, which is the best of the 3. So I guess I should tell you a little bit more about that after my cat tries to jump on the laptop again. Go away. Moxie, go away. Anyways, prolactin is the hormone that breastfeeding mothers have. It's actually what enables you to breastfeed. And so one of the symptoms, sorry, I'm like, cat. I have my hand up.
It's fine. Cats are allowed to be on the show.
Well, she'll try to jump right at you. So either go or stay. Make up your mind. Anyways, so some people, their symptoms are they'll lactate. They're not pregnant or they didn't have a kid. And this happens to men too. Men can get this too. So you'll just suddenly be lactating for no reason. And that's a huge sign that you have this tumor, which I never had that. I never had that symptom, which I'm okay with. But that's one sign. Another thing is irregular periods. That's why my periods would have been irregular. So I could have had this thing since 2013. I don't know.
Wow.
Yeah. And then here's where it gets interesting when you compare it to endo. It affects your estrogen levels. It lowers them. So I was actually a little protected because of the tumor, because my periods were like irregular, my estrogen levels were lower. So I think that's why my symptoms weren't as bad as other people's endo.
That's really interesting.
Yeah.
Wow.
So I was protected in a strange way from it being more physically painful.
Right.
It's really wacky.
Wow.
And it causes infertility. So I had a double whammy of infertility, the tumor and the endo. But it was really nice to have something to blame it on. Like,
For
you know
sure.
what?
Well, it's nice to have answers. Not that you want either of the things, but that that, it's not in your head. That's the thing that is the hardest part is, something's wrong. And this is confirming that something was wrong.
Yeah, exactly. And so it was really validating. It was really validating to know, okay, I had two things working against me. Let's see, what else does it do? It causes anxiety, which I already have. So that was fun. I'm wearing this because it makes your hair, for some people, it can make your hair thin. And I don't have a lot of hair anyway. And so now I kind of look like Gollum in Lord of the Rings. So I'm like, I'm just going to wear beanies. And that's just who I am now. It also slows down your metabolism. So it makes it really difficult to lose weight. It can lead to early onset osteoporosis because of the estrogen levels going down. So it's kind of like and I might have that because I just had a CT scan for my kidney stone. I told you I had a kidney stone. And they found a small fracture in my spine for no reason. And so now I have to get tested for osteoporosis, and I'm not even 40 yet. So that's fun. And and then if it gets big enough, it can actually cause visual problems because it presses on your optic nerve and you can get like permanent vision loss. So like this thing, and you get major migraines, and I had to deal with all this on top of the endo, and I couldn't get my birth control. So 2023 was the worst year ever.
That's a lot. That is a lot. Oh my goodness. And so do they leave it in and they just watch it?
Yeah, you take something called cabergoline, which is a really gnarly medication. You can have any side effect from nausea to straight out hallucinations, which luckily I don't have, but it makes me really tired and I get brain fog and I get like rapid heartbeat. So it's like really hard to exercise. And then if you take it long term, it can permanently damage your organs. So I don't want to take it too much longer. I just had another MRI to see what my tumor was doing, and it didn't shrink very much. So I have to be on it at least another year, probably longer. And I think if it's not getting better after a couple of years, I'm just going to ask for brain surgery and get it out.
Yeah.
Because that medication's really rough.
Really intense. Yeah, it sounds like it is. Wow. Okay, so that's 2023. It all happened at once. You got all of this at one time. Wow.
Yeah.
And you talk about brain fog. You were like, the doctor you had on your podcast, literally on the spot. I was like, I can't. So Dr. Fogelson is my guest. Who you were talking
I think
about.
That's right.
It came back to me. My brain fog for a minute, just no names came into my head, though I know who you were talking about. But, wow. Okay. So your doctor says, this is what they think for the endo. You find this out. What happened? What a crazy year. Like, what happened next, or what did you do, or how did you deal with it? This is a lot to hear at one time.
I called 2023 the year I disappeared because I just didn't hang out with people. When it was Thanksgiving, I told my family, I have a brain tumor. I'm not coming to Thanksgiving. And I was really happy not to because it was a nice excuse. I used it for everything. I'm like, you know, I have a brain tumor. I'm going to really milk this thing. I'm like, I don't want to do this. I have a brain tumor.
I'm skipping Thanksgiving this year. I'm just going to watch horror movies. It's fine.
Yeah, it was great. It was so wonderful.
But you know what? You probably needed the space. You needed the space.
Yes.
I mean, it's important to talk about that. Like, you probably needed space to just take it all in.
Yeah, well, your whole trajectory, I mean, it's not like I have cancer or anything, and I try to remember that, but at the same time, I don't want to diminish, like, how my hair. I'm probably not going to have normal hair again, so I have to live as a beanie person, and people look at you differently when you don't have hair. They automatically assume you're sick, and you just don't feel like having that conversation, and, you know, I've just been really tired, and so I just kind of disappeared that whole year. And then it's 2024, as you know, so I'm starting to get back into trying to put my life back together because this is my life now. I'm going to be on this medication a long time. I have endo, and that's only going to get worse. And the birth control, getting used to that, I started having breakthrough bleeding. So like all of December, I was bleeding the whole month, and that really wasn't fun. I'm supposed to be skipping my periods, but they still show up sometimes. And it's just like, so I'm going to have to do something more. I'm just I'm tired. So I'm not being as aggressive as I should be about like getting a laparoscopy, finding out more answers. I'm just so tired. So,
you know what? It's okay. It's like, sometimes you have to take like a little break from it all.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, it's a lot. Sometimes it can be a lot.
Yeah, I think I'm finally starting to come out of the worst of it and like be okay seeing humanity again and, you know, getting used to my new normals because these are new normals. I'm not the same as I used to be. And it's frustrating because you lose a part of yourself.
You do. And it's one day at a time is kind of how you have to take it when you get a lot of this type of information. And sometimes I tell people one moment at a time because one day might even be too much. You know, it's just like, okay, what's the next test I have to get? What's the next scan? What's the next step? And doing it at your pace. I mean, I think that and go off your symptoms and just do the best that you can.
Yeah, exactly.
That's all you can do. Yeah.
Yep. So it's
how
a learning curve.
Feeling? Yeah. And for me, birth control was tough. I had a tough time on birth control. How are you feeling like day to day and what's going on right now?
I feel like it's
besides
improving.
The kidney.
Besides
stone. The kidney stone.
Yeah.
That's a side project.
I have not been very impressed with this year so far. Like, this is supposed to be better. And then I get a kidney stone. Oh well. Like from the birth control for the first few months, it was horrible. Like the migraines that I already had got so much worse. And luckily that got better eventually, but I was like, oh wow, someone's like drilling something into my brain, it feels like. And then the breakthrough bleeding, but we have a new system where if I start to have breakthrough bleeding, I just allow myself to have a mini period, and then it's not so painful on the mini period. If I only have it for like 4 days, it's not too bad. And then I go a few months without a period again. So it's because I don't want to do anything that's too strong hormone wise. I already have enough hormones out of whack. So I like the Nuva Ring because it has fewer lower hormones. So for now, I'll deal with that. Yeah. So it's gotten better. My cabergoline can make me feel a little crazy sometimes, like mood swingy and emotional, but I feel like that's settling down. I got on some mild anti-anxieties that helped even it out. And so one thing I want to say is like, everybody says medication, you shouldn't be on medication, but sometimes you freaking need it. And it's okay to accept that you need it because my body's out of whack. I need medication to be normal. And there's no shame in that. So there's all these people like, oh, natural, you shouldn't have chemicals, but we're not all that lucky. Sometimes it's just the way you have to live. And I've accepted that. I'm on like 7 medications and I'm okay. Yeah. It makes me functional. And I need them. And I'm going to need them for a long time.
I'm glad that you said that, because you're right. There is a lot of shame around medication, and sometimes you need to have medication. It's just, it's the bottom line. There's no shame in that. Like it's was designed for a reason. And I think that's a really good point. I'm glad that you brought that up, because I do
Thank
think
you.
there's a lot of shame around that. And if you need pain medication, there's nothing wrong with that. You know, I talk to so many patients when they go to the ER and they're shamed, and it's like,
Oh,
the
yeah.
person who you have no clue what this pain feels like. Like, this is, you can't function otherwise. And sometimes you have to take medication to help to get through that moment or that day, or
Yes.
like what you said, you have to have it.
Fun fact, I think I already told you this, but I have experienced hardcore endo pain because once the cabergoline got my prolactin levels down, I wasn't protected anymore. And my periods were epically bad. And like, oh, this is what endo is like. Oh my goodness. And so I've had that extreme, and then I've had kidney stone extreme. So I know which one's worse. So in terms of pure pain, endo absolutely matches kidney stone, if not beats it. The only difference is, for me, my endo is more, you can tame it with medication a little better than kidney stones, because kidney stones are like, nice try, I'm going to ignore you. And then you get a lot of nausea with kidney stones that you just can't control. So that's why kidney stones are a little worse. But in terms of pain, because everybody says kidney stones are like the worst pain, but I'm like, you know what? Endo is just as bad. I know, because I've had both, if not worse, seriously. So it is nothing to slight. Endo pain means business.
It is not messing around. That is for sure. Well, I appreciate you sharing just all of this and what's been going on. And I think it's insightful. And there may be someone else who's listening that literally has this very similar situation happening as to what you had. And, you know, I just keep thinking, like, thank goodness that that nurse practitioner did the blood test.
Yeah, I would never know. Never. And you know what? I'm not the only one with this. I looked it up, and there's plenty of people who have both. And so it's not that uncommon, really. I
always, you know, speculate as a non-medical professional, just endo seems to always have something else with it. Like, I just, you know,
I think you're right.
I have the Hashimoto's, and I've met other people that have POTS and endo. I mean, or Ehlers-Danlos syndrome. It's just very interesting to me as to why. Like, why does that happen? Is it something with the immune system? Is it the hormones? Is it, you know, I have so many questions that we don't have answers to. But I think having these conversations is what makes the difference, so other people can know they're not alone.
Yeah. And if you don't fit every checkbox, that doesn't mean you stop looking for answers. Don't be like me. And because I don't know, I don't like making waves. So if the doctor told me something, I just went with it, and I shouldn't have. So, like, advocate for yourself and be aggressive, because it is your health. And as much as, like, my doctor was my friend, she wanted good things for me, but she still kind of fell short for me. So even good, well-meaning people can fall short, and you have to be your own champion, because no one else is going to. So it's huge.
It's so true. And I agree. Like, I do think a lot of doctors have the right intention. They just don't have the awareness, which is not great on their part. But we have to keep pushing and keep pushing and keep pushing, which is hard, especially when you don't feel good. But that's the best way to get the answers. You got to do it. Tori, is there anything else you want to add, or anything that you've done that has helped to make you feel better, or any other tips, tricks, advice you want to give on any of the endo patients who are listening?
Let's see. The only thing that really works for me is bath and muscle relaxants. So that's my key. But I did want to mention something. When it comes to infertility, I feel like we're severely underrepresented in terms of, like, that being our end path. So, like, if you're watching movies or TV, or you hear things, there's always people with infertility, and then they magically have that miracle baby that works out for them. And that's just not always true. And I feel like those of us who don't have that ending need more representation. And I feel like if that happens, it's okay to be sad, and it's okay to grieve that. And it's also okay to find a way to accept it and figure out the next steps for you. And one thing that really drives me crazy is that people just want to like thrust these supposed fixes at you. Like, oh, get IVF. Oh, you can adopt. Oh, you can do this. And it's like, you're not taking my pain seriously. And it's okay to be that voice, because so many people get uncomfortable with your situation and you feel like you can't talk about it. And I feel like that needs to be represented better.
Really well said. Yes, 100% yes.
Thank you.
Is so important. It is so, so important. And you're right. I do feel like everyone's just trying to throw a fix. Even with endo, I feel the same way. Like, do yoga, eat gluten-free,
try
all
this
of these,
supplement. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And again, I know the intention, it is well intended, but you bring up a very valid point about infertility, is that that is underrepresented of it may not happen, and how like there needs to be more conversations about that.
Yes. Yeah. And how to learn how to deal with it, how to figure out what's next for you, and how to be okay with not being okay. Because that's really what it is.
Yes. And that's also very, very important. And being able to have open conversations about these things that feel taboo, or like you kind of said, it's almost like people don't want to acknowledge it or talk about it. And it's okay. Like that's the only way we're going to come up with solutions and healing, is to talk about it. Sweeping it under the rug's not going to solve any problems. So
exactly. So it's just letting people know they're not alone.
Yeah, we need just more outwardly public conversations about infertility and pregnancy, like not being able to get pregnant, and endo and women's health in general.
Exactly. Yep. And that's why I'm really grateful you have this podcast. So thank you, because I learned so much from this, because it's a lot. And every time I have somebody who has the same obscure symptoms that I have, I'm like, oh, hey, I'm not alone. And it's just really wonderful. So thank you so much for having this.
Oh, thank you so much for being here, and thank you for being vulnerable and sharing your story with us. It's going to help so many people. I really, really appreciate it. And I hope you have a great rest of your day, and that kidney stone gets out of you soon.
Yeah, me too. Ugh.
Well, thank you everyone so much for listening, and wishing everyone that you feel well today. If you liked this podcast or any of the podcasts, or if it's brought you value, please rate us either on Spotify or on Apple. I'd really appreciate that. Helps us get more visibility and more guests. So thank you again, Tori, so much for being here. I really appreciate it. And thank you to all the listeners who listen and support the show. You help make a difference, and I really appreciate you. Take care.